There is one major reason why I will be upgrading to the iPhone 14 Pro, and no, it is not because of the new cutouts and getting rid of the notch. In this video, I'm gonna talk about the new info that just came out, along with giving you guys the exact specifications and showing you how much of a difference this is actually going to make with actual images, so you know if it will be worth it for you. Now, personally, I don't really care that much about the cutouts. I know Vadim is very excited about it, and it is nice getting rid of that really dated notch, but even though it's gonna look better, it doesn't really give you that much screen real estate because of that pill and then the circular cutout for the camera. What is gonna matter is the camera itself, and not the rear camera, but the front one as well. We already know all of the information and the full spec sheet list showing us exactly what upgrades we're gonna get, and they are pretty major. Over the last few months, we've gotten a ton of information about this new sensor, and not only is it gonna get much larger, which is a huge increase in size, I'm talking about 57% larger as far as surface area compared to the already big sensor in the iPhone 13 Pro series, making it literally bigger than a lot of compact point and shoot cameras. So we're literally reaching a new level now, but along with that, a really big increase in tech. But for the first time ever, jumping up from a 12 megapixel, which we've had for many years, up to 48 megapixels. Which is why the actual camera bump is gonna be not only larger, but also thicker as well, with the lenses protruding more, resulting in this massive camera module that is huge compared to even the really large one on the iPhone 13. I mean, just look at that huge camera module. Now, Vadim did a very deep dive going into all of the tech, the sensor sizes, the size of the pixels with quad bearing. So if you want all the fine detail, you should definitely check out that video, but this one isn't about that. The new info that we have is that Apple is ditching their Chinese manufacturer for the front-facing camera and going to one from South Korea. Now, this change alone isn't that massive, but what is massive is that it is going to cost Apple 3 times more money than in previous years for the selfie camera, meaning it is also going to be a really big improvement. Now, they were originally going to do this with the iPhone 15, but they're doing it a year early, and that's great because in some of these images, well, the iPhone 13 Pro gets killed by its Android competitors. Now, what we know for sure that there are 2 specific guaranteed improvements, the first being an f1.9 lens, which lets in more light, and the second being autofocus. Now, with a lot of Android phones, we already have this where if you're pulling your phone closer or further, it will focus to make sure your face is sharp, whereas with the iPhone, if you're putting it too far away or too close, it will not be as detailed. So let's go ahead and jump in and let me show you exactly what kind of photo quality improvements we can expect, along with some changes in video and also some possible downsides for the iPhone 14 Pros. Let's start out with this image right here. You can see that the Pixel 6 Pro's shot looks much more detailed than the iPhone, even though it's a less expensive phone. That is because the Pixel, Google is using a 50 megapixel main sensor, where Apple has a 12 megapixel as they've had for years. Upgrading to that 48 megapixel sensor that we know that is coming is going to greatly improve the detail level. This is something that I wanted for years because it is a downside. I mean, look at this shot. It shows it so plainly how much more detailed the Pixel 6 photo is. When we zoom in 200%, you notice a drastic difference in actual detail of every image you take. And that's not only the case for the Pixel 6. Samsung's had high resolution sensors for a long time now, and in this shot you see that the Samsung image is much more detailed. This is without that much of a crop. And that's not only the case in daytime photos. At night, with that quad bearing or Samsung's 9 layered Bayer down to a 12 megapixel, you see that this night shot is so much more detailed than Apple's. And this is something that we've consistently found in our blind, unbiased camera comparison tests, that having that extra resolution really helps. Now, Apple's done a great job with Deep Fusion, they've done an amazing job with portraits, but at this point we are hitting a wall with the 12 megapixel sensor and also with the front-facing camera that I'll show you in just a bit. If you watch these comparisons, it just shows you how much the high resolution sensors of Android are getting far ahead now from Apple's iPhone. Now, people say that iPhones have gotten so good, you don't need to have a DSLR anymore. But what people fail to mention is that DSLRs and lenses have gotten much better, and most of them are using much higher resolutions as well. For example, I just went on a trip to Phoenix and I took a real camera with me, and on the right here we have our iPhone shot that looks great. But if you care about detail and you're gonna look closer, do any sort of cropping, you could see how much better a 50 megapixel sensor looks compared to iPhone's 12 megapixel. Now, Apple does a shockingly good job with HDR and processing, but then if we go ahead and take a little bit of a closer look, not just on your phone, the quality difference of the actual photo is dramatic in terms of detail that it captures. I mean, look at this. You can actually see all the fine little spikes on the cactus compared to a bunch of artifacts and just kind of mush there. And in this shot, without even zooming in, you could tell that the image on the left looks a lot more detailed. And then if we take a closer look, I mean, that quality difference is dramatic. Now, you don't need a DSLR to get shots that are this detailed. Samsung is offering this, and even Google with their Pixel series, and a lot of other Android phones have been doing this for a couple years. Now, I know some people will say, well, the iPhone's already good enough, I don't really care about photo quality, but I have a different perspective on it. People take all their photos, or most of them, with their smartphone, and these are the memories that you're gonna have for the next 20 years, 30 years. You're gonna show it to your kids, your grandkids, and our parents had great photos from film cameras to show us where the detail is really good. And if we're taking photos that are mushy looking and not great, I mean, to me, that's one reason why I wanna have the latest iPhone or an Android phone, to capture memories that you're gonna have for a lifetime. Now, that doesn't only go into detail on that rear camera. This is where the front-facing camera on the iPhone has really fallen apart compared to Androids over the last couple years. If you take a look at this shot right here with the S22 Ultra, they are using a 40 megapixel front-facing camera, and it looks so much better than the iPhone. The HDR looks better, and the detail in the face, the skin tones, it's not as flat. It looks way better. This is why I've been tempted to use an Android phone, even take an Android phone on my vacation to get shots like this. I mean, it's dramatically better. If you had to choose one of these to keep forever, which photo would you choose? I would obviously choose the Samsung image. And even at nighttime, with that pixel binning, it looks much more like an actual real camera than having a smartphone-like image. This is the kind of quality that we can expect with this upgrade from Apple on both the front-facing camera and that rear-facing camera. Now, of course, with that, going up to 48 megapixel will allow for 8K video that Apple has not had. Samsung has been offering this for a few years now, but if you take a look, the shot on the left actually looks worse than the shot on the right, which is the iPhone shooting 4K instead of 8K. That is because they're going with a 108 megapixel sensor that's to crop in a ton and needs a lot more processing, so it turns out looking worse than Apple's 4K. And because of that, their night mode video, even in 4K, looked much worse than Apple's. And this is why Apple chose to go with a 48 megapixel sensor. It's perfect for 8K, and it's gonna make it look amazing without any of the downsides. I honestly cannot wait for this camera upgrade. So what are gonna be the downsides if we have these massive improvements? Well, as far as we know, only the main camera is gonna go up to 48 megapixel. The front-facing one might get a bump up too, but we're not yet sure. We don't have that information. I really hope it does. But as far as the ultra-wide and the telephoto, it's going to stay the same. We're not gonna get one of those telescopic cameras. So you look at this image here, the Pixel 6 Pro looks so much more detailed than the iPhone because of its 48 megapixel telephoto camera, whereas the iPhone is still stuck at 12. And with that, the ultra-wide is also gonna stay at 12 megapixels, so you look at the image on the right, looks so much more detailed than the iPhone's camera. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't improve software, can't improve maybe the low light sensitivity to have some improvements, but it's not gonna be as massive as a jump as the rear 48 megapixel camera. So both of those are still gonna be less detailed than many of its Android counterparts, which is a bummer, at least to me, when I see these kind of photos and how far ahead some of the Android phones currently are. Of course, we still have some time, and it would be amazing if Apple upgrades the other cameras as well and we get more info. But you guys go ahead and let me know, is this enough for you to want to upgrade your phone? How much do you care about quality and the iPhone being multiple years behind compared to some of the Androids? Does that matter to you? Do you care? We want to hear your thoughts down below. Go ahead and click that subscribe button above if you guys want to see more videos like this, help us reach 1 million subscribers. Check out the in-depth, detailed video about the main camera system right over there. This is Max, and I'll see you in the next video.